I would say it's a great time to do art. The high rollers, the blue chip crowd will do well. Those of us who are not blue chip, I don't know, we've fallen into strange times, but one of my favorite movements in art is the new realism of Germany, pre-war Germany. Sometimes I'm on the verge of tears looking at them. They were giving us something very, very deep with a lot of meaning and feeling and even insight into humanity at that time. And I think now we may be approaching a similar situation. Were artists selling at that point? Hell no. They were making something about the world they lived in that meant something to them. And I think a lot of that has gone from the art world. It's all about following a trend, how you look, how you sound. Sometimes the person is more important than the art itself. And I don't want to make a sexist remark, but I think it's going to separate the men from the boys. This is a time when you see people doing something because they need to say something about themselves and the time they live in. It's extremely important.
How they tell you what you need to do, how you need to live, what you have to paint, how you need to sell, and then everything is lost. But right now, I think there's a lot of fear, and what's building up, it worries me. What do you think, Sherry?
Well, it is true that because we're so polarized, there's all of this black and white in what's going on, when in truth, it's the in-between that probably holds the truth of a situation. That doesn't mean that one should just kind of, I don't know, walk a middle ground and really not try to offend anyone. Let me talk about the United States, the government here. I think there's been a tremendous amount of corruption going on all along in government and business. And slowly but surely, very rich people have been taking over our government, and people haven't noticed. Also, I think the tech world has been moving in on our society, and we haven't noticed. If I calm down, which I'm trying to do, I kind of see that maybe this is a good thing because we're seeing all the corruption and all the polarity very clearly, and what it can do to us if we don't, a certain faction of us don't speak up and express ourselves. In a certain way, it's a good time. I will say that. It's a good time if you understand that it's a time of revelation, of here's what's really happening. Now, how do we address this situation? And as I said before, it's a great time for artists. And not something you can take to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
You know, first of all, I've never been in the take it to the bank crowd. I've always been an outsider. So I've never intended to make money. I would like to. If God's listening, you can give me some money. But I've always done what was intrinsic to me. If you're around me long enough and you see my work and you hear me in the physical, you know that I've done the work. It's been difficult for me at times, to not be with the neat kids, in the gymnasium, and the cute boy dances with me and so on and so forth. That's what I'm saying is, this need to really get inside oneself and show oneself and stay outside of what's popular has been a huge problem in the art world. But when you depend on popularity as the motive for doing your artwork, that's where I think things can go very, very poorly. And then in the art world, everybody's got to be famous also. Well, it doesn't have to spoil an artist's work if you let it, but it's a temptation.
You were speaking about corruption and speaking about visual corruption. We are corrupted. I mean, we're invaded and by thousands of images, unimportant images we're not seeking or looking for them, and that has to damage obviously our everyday, our mindset, our work, our feelings, our thought, our lives.
Yeah, how much are you swayed by what you see like on Instagram? I mean, artwork. How much are you swayed by that?
We're distracted. I mean, in the immediate way, we are constantly distracted, no? One of the most difficult things to do in life is to do nothing, no? Just to sit by yourself and contemplate and get immersed in yourself and in your thoughts and in your feelings and don't do anything. We're trapped. We're almost like forced to go into the device. I mean, it has its quality and its privilege, like to having this conversation regarding the distance and the difficulties of it and make it possible.
I'm an older person. I'm old.
Wow.
And I may be very fortunate in a certain sense that when I was growing up and started getting involved with art, I looked at art in museums. I went to the Art Institute of Chicago and I saw all of these wonderful paintings. You go and you look at great art, and through some process, which I can't describe, osmosis, something happens and you begin to understand what great art is. And I had a finite group of work to look at. I didn't have a constant flow of information. So what I learned was concise. It was quiet. I could go to it when I wanted to. I was in control of it. I think the real problem is going to be with younger artists who have just a flood of information coming at them. And how do you learn from that? And a lot of what's coming at them, I hope Mark Zuckerberg isn't watching this, is crap. It's like I'm sorry, Instagram, I'm going to lose the 2 or 3 people who are following me, but it's like, I see all this crap. And it's like, I can't learn from this. And then I'll, of course, hit somebody who's really terrific and I'll say, wow, that's terrific. But I learned about art in a different way. So we may be talking about generations here and what younger artists are having to experience, because museums are finite, but this constant flow of, and then I've got to be on Instagram and have so many followers. That's an added pressure, but I'm not that susceptible to it.
So it's a different game, a different dynamic going on, no? With everything, no? How we relate, how we live, how we think, how we even maybe paint, no? How we show our work, no? Galleries are suffering also. Everything is very fast, no? The rhythm is very fast, and to go that fast is horrible.
I'm sorry to say, some of the more important things that made people feel worthwhile are gone, and they've been replaced by, I must be famous. Yeah. If I'm not famous, I'm not anyone. Instead of, an act of kindness, just being there and showing up for a tedious job that actually is very helpful to a lot of people, like checking out groceries. It's an act of service. But now it's like, no, I got to be famous. Do I think the art world is in good shape now? No, I don't. No. What also concerns me is how many younger people are coming into the marketplace as collectors. Probably not a lot of younger people are thinking about collecting or looking at art. When I first came into the art world in the early 80s, I saw Soho open up. And there were just people buying art like, there was no tomorrow. Maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. I don't know. That's what was going on. But there were definitely people collecting. And now I wonder who collects, who even goes to the galleries. I mean, artists, every time I go, it looks like a bunch of other artists. It's like, they're not buying anything and neither am I.
The value that art has and the value that was communicated upon art is no longer happening. So it's not, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not valuable. I don't need it. Before, I think that there was a value upon it, not only upon a painting, but rather also like a book, which was very accessible, no? People bought books, even though today it can be digital and people still, but I mean, I don't know, that's not the, but there was a value upon also the material aspect of buying a book, no? And I think that there's a lot of things that we can do, and a lot of things we can do in these times, no? With all those difficulties, no? I think it's wonderful to, as we said before, like to be a painter in these days, no? Yes,
It's not for the weak, but it's for the driven. And there's an opportunity there.
before it was also very difficult. It's you need to be very brave to take the decision to become an artist. It's not exactly of these times. These times, as you say, it's very tricky because they tell you that in order to sell and survive and live upon your work, you need to be famous. And that only distracts upon your work. It makes things harder. It's very tricky.
You do your thing, you do it without hope of showing or money. And if that comes along, that's great. But you're doing it because you're getting messages, you have information. You have information from other sources. You have information about yourself. You have information about the world around you, and you need to make it visual, physical.
And even if it became even harder, we would still be doing it because
I'd still be doing it. I have a feeling that both of us are probably not, flying on the high line there, that we're pretty sort of underground in a certain way, isolated and not in the mainstream. And we're both talking about the same kind of circumstance. And maybe this is sour grapes. If I had made my living from doing artwork, I would have ended up in a completely different place. And maybe the work would be less meaty, less, filled with content. I don't know. Maybe this isn't so bad.
no, and it doesn't work the other. I mean, if you start painting to sell, I mean, you will suffer for it.